Amen. Amen. And this is one of the few parts I wanted to make sure I did do everything I wanted to do today and not leave myself needing to go any further. So that one is now 17 parts in the books. Hopefully, everyone should have a very strong, clear understanding now of those elements of faith, of works, and of salvation, and how they are interrelated, etc. If anybody has any comments or questions, this is the part we call the Afterburn. You're welcome to raise your hand and make comments or questions. If you're on the live stream, Kurt will man the live stream desk, and we'll take a few of those. So Dawid has the mic here. Shira's got her hand up over here first. And I just really hope that this makes all the difference in the world for you guys. I hope that, this is one of those things that I think the once saved, always saved is probably the worst, most dangerous thing that the church ever gave you guys. Okay? Because it completely disempowered you from wanting to actually do what you need to do. Because after all, you're saved. What else is there to do? And so this is a very, 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 very important thing to grasp. Shira.
Praise Yahweh. I want to do a happy dance. Even as you mentioned.
Happy dances are allowed on Shabbat, so you're
yay.
Okay.
Well, I have two comments. First of all, early on in the prayer time, you were talking about someone who accused you of coming across cocky and know-it-all, and you made the wonderful point of how we're lacking strong males. And that I had written down here, people are not used to a true anointed appointed. And Yeshua drew many people, even as MTOI is drawing, because he taught them with authority and not as the scribes.
Amen.
And amen to that. So great appreciation for that. I think I'm counting over 5.5 years now being here and sitting under your teachings and all the wrestlings that have happened. And I'm just amazed looking back at my first reaction to your first teaching on Are You Saved and how it just hooked me in. But now, after 5.5 years, whoa, I'm looking at the growth and the new understandings and what I've come through in trying to work those truths out. So here's my comment. I hope that this will encourage some who are newer in this walk or checking this ministry out and the truths that are being taught here. It was difficult to transition from the false emotional connection I thought I had with what I thought was the Spirit of Yahweh in Christianity. That internal voice that was always talking to me and always saying lovely things or sometimes even convicting, but just, foretelling the future. And I had journals of all the things that never happened that this voice told me were going to happen. and you get addicted to that. So how do you transition to a real relationship? How do you transition from that emotional addiction to a false spirit? And learn to read his true voice to us. And I thought of how, Yeshua said, evil generation looks for a sign. And we look for that warm fuzzy. We look for that thing. But this has been great because I just wrote a couple things down here. Wow, okay, I know him because I love doing his commandments, because I desire his correction, because I'm aware of his voice through anointed leaders. There's fruit, more power to truly care for others. There's victory in the soul realm, inner healing. There's seeing prayers abundantly answered, more miracles without anybody laying hands than I ever saw in Christianity. Amen, amen.
Amen.
Peace and joy, relief from stress, a sense of security, a sense that my feet are on the rock. And coming to that and being able to be satisfied with all that has been a real challenging journey. So I just want to encourage all who are new starting out, if you came out of that, if you came out of charismania or whatever you came out of, and there's things that you can be hooked on, keep plodding on. It's so worth it.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Shira. And, and I'm sure that this has a very sort of unique sort of spot for you, because this is the teaching that you first time you ever heard me. And it was in the context of someone accusing me of teaching salvation by works and being a false teacher and all of that. And so I almost have to send that person a thank you letter, because you wouldn't have been here, if he hadn't sent out that email, attacking me like that. So, but that's the power of this, is to start to recognize that some of us have addictions to our emotional stuff, or the things that give us emotional nourishment. We're trying to feed our emotion as opposed to feeding our ruach, feeding the spirit, feeding ourselves from a different point of view. And my answer is always, look, there's nothing wrong with being emotional. You can get plenty emotional as you're doing this, but don't let the emotions drive the car. Okay? Don't let your emotions drive. And that shouldn't be the driving force either, to try to elicit an emotion. We've had people leave because we're not doing things that bring out that emotion enough, so they want to go find it somewhere else. Well, why is that what we're seeking? We should be seeking truth and empowerment to apply that truth, and not a feeling. Okay, the feelings will come appropriately in the right timing, in the right place. But be careful that you don't realize, be careful, because you may not realize that you're addicted to the emotion. And then you're seeking what will give you that emotion. No different than any other drug. A drug makes you feel a certain way, so you keep taking the drug. Well, you go to a place for services, and they make you feel a certain way, and then you go someplace else and they don't. You're going to want to go back to where you felt that way because you liked it. You were addicted to it. So we have to be careful with that. Thank you for bringing that up. Who's next? Anybody? Okay, bring it to Nate. Okay, Mr. Nate.
See if I can get this all out. As far as leadership, and I'm very thankful, I don't submit my allegiance, I guess, or commitment to just anybody. And I definitely would have a hard time with somebody that was mamby-pamby, wishy-washy, not confident, but also being able to understand the difference between confidence and arrogance. And that's what I see in this leadership here. And I'm really thankful that, yes, you are very compassionate and caring, but you also know when to put your foot down and do it in a loving manner, but with a leadership authority that says, no, okay, this is where this is going to stop. And we need strong leadership like that in order to get to where we need to go. And I'm really thankful that this, and this is a big reason why we see where Abba is using this ministry through Rabbi Steve, is that he's wanting to build the body so that we can work together to serve the body, but without compromising the truth. And that's where we need that strong leadership that is confident in what is being said, so that when that non-truth from where we have been tries to creep its way in here real simply to try to sneak its way in, he can see it and put the stop to it, and we're trusting that leadership to keep us out of that, falling into the same pitfalls that the nation of Israel fell into so long ago. So I just want to encourage you, Rabbi, keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate that, Nate. Thank you very much. I appreciate those encouraging words very much. And by the way, some of you may have thought to give me some encouraging words and thought, well, I don't want to make his head all big and everything else. Well, if you could read all the stuff I get that says the opposite, you'd realize that I could use the encouraging words. Because those people aren't reluctant at all to say the things they say, so they don't hesitate at all. Anybody else? Okay, Daweed?
I just wanted to thank you very much for the entire Deuteronomy 8 Shlemiel, because it basically brings out a lot of the things that I've...
Did you just say I'm a Shlemiel?
No. Okay, sorry. The entire spiel, okay?
Yes.
I probably picked the wrong word. Wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, so I just wanted to point out that the Deuteronomy 8 thing and everything from verse 1 all the way through is pointing out something that people in Christianity keep missing because they keep trying to turn it into this spiritual, otherworldly kind of thing. They keep turning repentance into just simply a one-time, so to speak, decision that you make to follow Jesus. But the point is they miss the part about repentance. Repentance is not just simply a decision to quote-unquote follow Jesus per se. It's a decision to follow Yeshua in how he walked. And how he walked was to do Torah. That is what it is. You turning away from following the world to following Yeshua and doing what he did. That's what it is. And you bring that out in your teaching on repentance. But it also comes out in other ways in this teaching, Are You Saved? And I just love it and I appreciate it. And I started to get an inkling of this before I got here, but it really came to complete focus and clarity when I came here. And I would not have come to that clarity if I had a wishy-washy discipler.
Amen. And actually there's a teaching called What Did Yeshua Do? Which I probably need to redo anyway, because that one's one of the older ones that's not on video, so maybe we'll get that next week. You know, I was also thinking of Love in Torah. Anybody interested in that one being redone? Yeah. Love in Torah? Because that one's one of the oldest ones that needs to be put on video. Okay, and it was 3 parts, so that means it'll be 18 or something. Well, Are You Saved was 5, it turned into 17, so I don't know. But we'll see how that goes. I'm just thinking of, it's not that I don't want to write anything new, but I think there are so many things still that need to be redone and in much more depth and put on video to be powerfully effective. So Love and Torah is one of the ones I was thinking of doing, and that's possibly what we'll see next week, because that one might need a really good, strong reset, you know. So hopefully that would make some sense. Okay, Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah. Just want to encourage my brothers and sisters to pray for the people that are trapped in this church system, because we know so many people through the years who are living this thing with integrity, who are very good people, salt of the earth. And we just hate to see them caught in this system. Just to give you a little idea of what they're up against. Brenda and I were eating breakfast yesterday. We were coming out and we saw this pickup. We took a picture of it. And on the pickup truck, it says in bold letters, "Everybody goes and stays in heaven. A follower of Jesus will forgive the world for their sins. A follower of religion will condemn the world for their sins. Which will you choose?" So this is the rhetoric that, you know, a lot of us grew up in this kind of stuff. And it, you know, it makes you feel good to think, oh, yeah, you know, there's nothing we got to do. It's all done for us. So,
and everybody gets in.
Yeah, everybody gets in and we stay. And we're going to heaven. But we're not even going to heaven. You know, he's coming here. He's bringing it here. But anyway.
See, that description of heaven sounds like hell to me.
Yeah. Right.
Everybody gets in. Nobody has to change it all, and we're going to live forever together. So anybody want to keep doing this forever the way we are now? I don't.
But I encourage people to pray. Yep. Pray for the Father for their eyes to be opened and their ears to be opened, and for Him to draw. Because I've gone out and knocked on doors myself without a whole lot of accomplishment, you know. So I've been there and done that, got that T-shirt, but we got to pray. We got to pray in earnest that the Father will draw more people out of the system.
Kurt in the back, go ahead.
All right. Well, I have lots of questions online about the Father and Son, and I want answers immediately on this. So clarify if I'm wrong and what I'm telling them. I'm telling them to go listen to the teaching and then come back to you later if they have further questions. Well, since you brought it up in this this context here, they want answers now. So is that true in the state?
Listen, to be fair to whoever's asking the question, I know there's a bunch of you asking questions. If you called me up, I would do the same thing that I'm doing right now. I would encourage you to watch the teaching, because if you want the truth, well, if you want to know my position on the truth, then if it took me 11 hours to explain it to everyone, why would you think I could explain it to you in 2 minutes or in 5 minutes? Okay? Now, it's 11-part teaching. Listen to part 1. If you don't like it, stop. If it makes some sense and you want more information, go to part 2. Don't be intimidated by being 11 parts. But I mean, if this is my opinion, if you don't have the willingness to listen to the teaching, to get the information, then you really are not wanting the answer. You just, because you don't like what you heard, you wanting to argue and you want to deal with whatever pain I caused stepping on a toe, on something that you've believed, and so you're looking for, or maybe you want some clarity because you didn't really understand what I said. Fine, clarity is going to come through the teaching. And some of you know what I'm talking about in terms of you've called me and I've said to you, here's the teaching that covers that. By the way, it's not like you listen to mainstream teachings where it's going to be a story and a this and a that and then 5 seconds of what the topic is. We're going to only deal with the topic, starting as soon as I say, today, okay, we're going into whatever the name of the teaching is. And so if you really want to understand the Father and the Son thing, it's complex. It's different than you ever thought. It's totally going to mess with so much stuff. You have to look at the verses, follow it verse by verse by verse, and be patient that stuff I'm going to say in part 1 and 2 and 3 may not get totally clarified till we get to part 8, 9, or 10. Now, the whole sheep know my voice thing, that's part 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I think. Or it starts around part 6. I deal with that in the Father and the Son teaching. The whole idea of my sheep know my voice as part of that teaching. Okay? So please, if you really need to understand these things, nothing's an emergency. The teachings are on the line free. I can understand you being more upset about it if I wanted you to buy the teaching. Teachings are free. You can listen to it at your convenience. You can listen to it right now. It doesn't break Shabbat for you to finish the service and go pull up a teaching and start listening to it. Okay? So you can go and do that. And then if there's anything that you still need further clarification, you're always welcome to contact us, call, or whatever. And I'd be very happy to talk to you about it and answer your questions. But if you call me about it, I'm going to ask you if you listen to the teaching first. Because I don't have time to answer everybody's questions for 2 or 3 hours when I can send you to the teaching first and only answer the little piece that you didn't understand or didn't agree with or whatever. Does that make sense? Okay? That's kind of why we put these teachings out. I do teachings on the topics that I believe you need to understand that are the most important, that address all of these issues in as thorough a nature as I can. All right? And so please be patient with Kurt as he's, being your guys are addressing with these things. His sending you to the teaching is exactly what I would do too. Even though I'm the one who made the teaching. If you called me up, I would still tell you, please go listen to the teaching first. Because some of you have already done that. Even when you walked up to me after service and say, I had a question about tithing, or I had a question about grace, or did you listen to the teaching yet? No, go listen to it first. Why? Because it's the best way to get the answer. It's verse by verse by verse, line by line. Go through it. Okay? There's no self-serving in it for me. I don't make any money from you watching the teachings. Okay? It's just about, that is the best, it's the better answer than I'm going to give you off the top of my head without my verses out of my notes. So it is the best, most thorough answer you're going to get anyway, on whatever the topic is. Okay, at least as far as understanding what I mean by what I say. Go listen to it, you'll hear it. Okay, next.
All right, one more here real quick. There's more coming, but I'm falling behind because of these certain questions. All right, this next one's more on context, but it's, Joni's asking, how does Romans 10:14 relate to us not going out and sharing the gospel?
Okay. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without one proclaiming? Okay? And the problem is, in understanding that situation there is, first of all, the proclaiming is not done by everybody. It's done by those who are trained to proclaim. Does that make sense? Those who have an anointing and a gifting and they're called to proclaim. And guess what? I do that every day that I'm in front of a mic and we put it on YouTube and it's proclaiming. And the Father can draw them to it anytime he chooses. I don't have to knock on doors, stop people in line at the supermarket or anything like that. I mean, so Paul's not saying anything different here in Romans than what I'm saying, okay? He's simply saying, look, they can't, he's making an argument for somebody to actually be available to do these things. He's not making an argument that everybody has to do these things. But see, you're still thinking through a Christian mindset where you were told everybody's job is to go out and do this great commission, Matthew 28. Nonsense. The guys in Matthew 28 were trained to do the job. Yeshua didn't send out everybody. He sent out his taught ones, the ones he trained for a period of time specifically to do what they were about to do. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. Tricia?
Okay, I want to see if the way I'm understanding this is correct. So the Father draws us to the Son, the Torah, to be taught by him. So even with the taught ones being taught, even they withdraw. So is it fair to say that even being taught by the Father, he still chooses to not open their eyes, even though you can be taught? And perhaps they were tested to see if they were worthy to have their eyes open, which is why he puts us through the tests, James 1:2, to be rewarded, the test being counted all joy when you go through various trials, rewarding having our eyes open or having understanding, which proves the testing of our faith.
Okay, the answer to that is no, okay? And the reason is this. Well, yes and no. Yes, when Yeshua said, some of you are not of my flock. Those are just people that happened to hear him and walking around and were checking out what he was doing. He says, well, you can't understand this because you're not of my sheep. When it said some of his taught ones stopped walking with him, that wasn't because they didn't have their eyes and ears open. It's because they made a choice. You have free will. That's the piece you need to have in there, is the free will. Okay? And so every one of them had free will. So if it said his taught ones stopped walking with him, it's not that they didn't have their eyes open and ears open. They just made choices. And so we have to remember that free will and that freedom of choice is always in there. Okay? So, but I know that's hard because coming from where you came from, to some degree, there was no choices. Okay, but when you said that in here you see that some of the taught ones no longer were walking with him, and you asked me, are those people that did not have their eyes open or ears open? And the answer is no. They had their eyes open. They would not have been his students otherwise. But they made choices to leave. Even Judas had his eyes open and ears open and made a choice. And he was one of the 12. Okay? See, somehow I think you're trying to link in that if you have your eyes and ears open, you wouldn't leave. No, you can leave with your eyes and ears open. Okay, look at how many people got laid low in the desert. They had their eyes and ears open. I mean, they witnessed everything personally, and they still made choices that were foolish. All right? There are a select few when he says, well, you don't understand because you're not of my sheep. Well, because he did gather crowds around him. There were just people coming to hear whatever the crowd was going to look for. He said, and some of those guys were not of his sheep. He said, but just because you have eyes open and ears open doesn't mean you're actually going to do everything. By the way, that also means the sheep and the goats thing where, you know what, even with eyes open, you could be not of his sheep and still be sitting right there and you have your eyes open and ears open, but you make choices. And so this is that tough part of it, to know that you are responsible for your decisions, your choices, and what you do with what he gives you. And if you need more clarification, you ask me afterwards. Okay? But we have to be careful with that. We'd like to think it's still almost a once saved, always saved mentality. If he opens our eyes and ears, if we're actually called and drawn by the Father to the Son, that we would never make the choice to leave. Well, you'd like to think that, but that's not the case. You can always make that choice. And that's the scary part for you. That's the fully empowered you to make decisions that will lead to your future. It's on you. It's on him to draw you. It's on you what you do with it. Okay, Nate?
Speaking of choices, when we heard our Father's voice when he was drawing us out of where we were, we either learned about Shabbat or feasts or eating clean, and we made choices along that way.
Right.
And then we came to you, and then when we studied what you're teaching, we went back to the scriptures and made the choice. Is this somebody that we can trust that would continue to help us make wise decisions concerning what our Father said? And one of my favorite teachings, since it was brought up, was the do you know the Father and the Son? Because everywhere that I had been, there was this wishy-washy, kind of like lots of holes in that in what they understood about the relationship. And because I saw, that was a boom moment, one of those boom type thing, if you've ever heard of that. For me, was that relationship between the Father and the Son. And once I saw that you were really digging into showing us, look, from the beginning to the end, this makes perfect sense. It made perfect sense to me from point A to point B. So we make the choice every day. Is Rabbi following Yeshua, and do I see Yeshua in Rabbi? And that's why our family and myself have chosen to follow this leadership, and not just him, but the leadership that is serving in this body, because there's no compromise of the truth, although that they want unity, and they want it probably more than most. But we continue to walk in that. So for those that are online questioning this teaching, please listen to the whole teaching. Don't just stop at the first one. It might be a little ruffling of the feathers, but it's going to help you to go, that actually makes a whole lot more sense than anything else that's out there.
Amen. I appreciate that. Look, and I hadn't really thought of it that way, but you're right. This is one of the things that causes a lot of division in the body, but is not really taught in any real clarity and depth, which is the nature of what we call the Godhead, or with the relationship of Father and Son, and how the Spirit fits into that, and all. That's, in some camps, it's like you believe in the Trinity or you're going to hell. Well, okay, that's one way of dealing with the issue, but it doesn't teach verse by verse what the actual relationship is. Okay, and so I actually went to a congregation. The teaching I did called Unity and Division in the Body? The first time I did it, I went to a congregation in North Carolina that literally was splitting over this oneness doctrine, that the Father was the Son and all this other stuff, and that there literally was just one and whatever it was. And I even spoke to a couple that said after I taught the Unity and Division teaching that may have saved their marriage, because they were about to split over this one misunderstanding or disagreement on one piece of doctrine. And so that teaching was not actually, I didn't know they were having this problem, by the way, when I did the teaching. It just sort of Abba's timing of bringing me there with this teaching, and they were needing it because the congregation was really, violently violent upheaval about this whole nature of the Godhead, so to speak, and which is really funny because that's a term I didn't really know how to explain. My daughter is doing a homeschooling curriculum that is fairly Christian, as a lot of them are. And so part of what they deal with, which I think is kind of fun to watch my children dismantle the Christian parts of it, but because they put it in every subject, okay? Whether it's math or anything, they sneak it in there in every subject. But the thing is, they started using this term Godhead, and so she asked me what that was. That's a very weird term, and especially when you think about it as a kid, what Godhead, what does that have to do with it? What does God's head? I don't know. I said they're trying to understand the nature of the authority structure in the universe and how that fits in terms of Father and Son, etc. They call that the Godhead, all right? Well, the teaching on the Father and the Son is my attempt to point out verse by verse from end to end in the books what Scripture actually lays out is going on in that area. And I appreciate that you pointed it out, Nate, that, what I tried to do there is something that probably not a lot of teachers, even do. That's a subject that just sort of gets kind of, why are you even questioning that? Go away, And so it took 11 parts to really kind of lay out the case. Some of you think I beat the thing to death whenever I do these teachings, and I do on purpose. Because I haven't said this in a while, but remember, the teachings are designed to do 4 things, right? You're supposed to understand it so that you can do it, so that you can defend it, so that you can teach it. Okay? Now, I can make a case for the Are You Saved teaching, not once saved, always saved, doesn't work type of thing, in like one part. Actually, the original teaching was one part. Okay? And that's what I did almost 20 years ago, was one part. I thought I made that case pretty strongly, and that was all I needed. But I wasn't thinking about the last two pieces, the defend and the teach. You got to know this thing all the way through so you can, as someone brings up whatever issues, you can say, okay, I've read that verse. I know where that verse fits into this. I can explain that. See how that explains this, and this fits into this. And by the way, the rabbi covered that in the teaching, so I know how that all plays through. So we cover every possible verse most of the time that we can. In the grace teaching, we covered every verse where the word actually appeared, all 200 times or whatever it was. Okay, so we did make sure to try to be thorough for a reason. I was talking to my wife this morning or last night when I was saying, I think I'm finally going to be wrapping up this teaching. I was like, I think I've probably made my case by now. It's only been 17 hours of this. I think the case has been made. But I want it to be thorough because there's too many people out there who are so holding on to their way of always seeing something that if I didn't cover that one verse, they're going to think that one verse undermines the other 16 hours of stuff. The other 300 verses we covered because I didn't touch that one verse that they're holding so tightly onto. Well, what about this verse? Goodness gracious. Well, how does that verse fit into the other 300? What about that? Don't ask me what about this verse. I'm asking you. How does that verse fit into the 300 that say opposite of what you think that one verse says? Why do I have to fit everything into your verse? Make that verse fit into all the rest of them. Remember, I've said this all the time. If you got 99 verses that say A and one that says B, the problem is not A. This is simple mathematics and logic. We have a very illogical body, though. I mean, we're just irrational and illogical. We don't think about these things. 99 verses that say pretty much the same thing. One seems to say something different. So good, we're going to change everything to fit into the one because I like it better, because it requires less of me. Basically, that's why we like those things, because they require less. If we like the one verse is going to tell us we don't have to do as much. That's why we like it. If the one verse said we had to do more, we wouldn't like it. But the one verse tells us we can do less, that's the one we like. So that's the one we have to go to all the time and say, oh, well, what about this verse? Well, what about it? You tell me, how does it, you tell me about it. I'm going to give you the other 300. You tell me how your one verse deals with these 300 over here. Oh, no, but Paul said it trumps everything. Really? Come on. He would be so embarrassed to know that that's what we're doing with his works, with his letters. Okay? Don't be ridiculous. All right, are we done? Okay. Renee, go ahead.
Not necessarily on topic, but I was wondering if there's a list of topics somewhere. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just keep it by your mouth.
Is there a list of topics of each of your teachings rather than just the title of the subject? Because sometimes there are topics within the teaching that are not listed, so it would help.
Okay, there is not. But what I am going to, let me ask you a question, all of you, in response to this, because I'm going to write this down again. So I don't forget that was something I wanted to do. Okay, I had an idea, and you tell me what this would work. Because some of the people online right now were frustrated because they went to the website, they're new, they went to the website and they couldn't find my statement of beliefs. Some of them are typing right now, yeah, I went and looked for it, I couldn't find it, I'm all mad. Okay, we've never had a statement of beliefs. You know why? How am I supposed to put in a 1 or 2 sentence line what I believe about the nature of the Father and the Son? How am I going to put in one line or one sentence what I think about grace or what I think of, you understand? How do you put, especially when you know it's so different than what everybody else has been taught for so long? So it's not fair to them to try to put a bullet point on these things. So we never did. So I always tell people the statement of faith is on the Learn With Us page. All 357 teachings or whatever's there, okay? That's the statement of faith. So what would you think of if we had a statement of faith page and when it said something like our belief about the Father and the Son, boom, there's a link to part 1 of the Do You Know the Father and the Son. The belief about grace, boom. So now you have your topical. Okay, here's the topic, and boom, there's the teaching. That's my statement of faith. Think that'd be good? Yes. All right. Okay? And so that's what I was thinking of doing, is having it just like everybody else's statement of faith, but just instead of answering the point, here's the issue or the point that they want to know about. Here's the teaching that addresses it. This is what we think about tithing. This is what we think about Shabbat. This is what we think about holy days. This is what we think about whatever, okay? Salvation or, like that. Are you saved? How do we feel about the salvation provided by Yeshua? Here it is. Are you saved? Part 1. Okay? Okay? So this is, we can make a statement of faith and link teachings, and that would kind of be topical to what you're talking about. Okay? And not exactly where we take all the teachings and put them into topics, although we can make categories. We're making a new website. The new website will hopefully have things like the teachings can be sorted into categories. I may have a bunch of things that we could put, like all the things that are related to observances, like feasts and Sabbath and everything could all be in one little section or whatever. We could try to make things more functional, so hopefully I'll remember to do that. David, I know you're watching in Alberta. Remind me that as part of the media team, that's something I want to do when we have media meetings with the webmaster, et cetera. So, but I think that would be very useful on the website even to categorize some things. Right now, you just can sort them alphabetically. Although what you're looking for is mostly in the title of each of the teachings anyway. So if you did a search on our website, it'll pull up the teachings with that thing in it, whether it's tithing or feast or Sabbath or grace or whatever, right? It'll be there. So mostly that, I don't generally have ambiguous sounding names of teachings that don't really have the topic in them, and so that should work. Good question though. So it was a little off topic, but not really. But so we all agreed that it'd be a good idea to make a statement of faith with links to teachings? Yes. Okay, we can do that. That was an idea I had a long time ago, so I thought that might be, right, Marty? We talked about that a long time ago, right? All right, so anybody else? All right, let's go get the children. Shabbat Shalom! Shavua Tov! Give him a double scratch. I love you guys.